You found the skeleton. How would you tell it's a dinosaur? You personally, how would you decide?
Well, interesting question. I don't know. I'd have to do some research on that.
All right, hello everyone. How are we? We are here for Dapper Reacts number 119, Babel Bull, in which we are going to learn what the original language was and how Moses was able to read such texts. All right, we're taking
Let's
bets
do it.
now. Is it Enochian?
No, it's the Lush part. It was the Lush and Kodesh.
Oh, okay.
Duh.
I think,
I'm just gonna say it's Hebrew.
which would be weird given like the very obvious historical linguistic connections between Hebrew and other languages that precede it.
I mean, it's
Right, but what does
it's
Bode
Bodhi Hodge.
what does Bode
Facts
care
don't
about
matter.
all that stuff? No, he's good. He's fine.
I just realized the text wasn't well centered, so I just centered it. You're welcome, everyone in the audience who was going to have that drive me crazy.
Dude, now I have to shift this window.
Oh no!
Thank you very much.
Oh no! All right. So,
wow.
First of all, in case anyone is new here, welcome to Dapper Reacts. This is where basically I just take a look at whatever I want to and give you my my take on it. It's usually young Earth creationism stuff. In this case, it's
not.
Well, it is and it isn't, right? Because the idea of like taking the Tower of Babel literally is a thing that young Earth creationists are definitely going to do. And the only reason to see it as like particularly historical is Noah's Ark, but it also doesn't directly deal with like evolution or the age of the Earth and stuff. So like, cognitive trifurcation says obviously the original language was Klingon. Yes, well, clearly we all do know that. Which actually I was looking at some bits of Bible translation into Klingon. And one thing I noticed was that there was a bit in at least one of the Psalms where the word ish was translated as person. Quote.
No.
And I realized I think I know the reason for this. I'm pretty sure that the guy doing this translation is not translating from Hebrew and just sees the English word man, knows that especially in fairly older texts, man is often just used for person in older English texts. And is just using it that way without ever referencing back. Which I was like, this is... And then I was also like, okay, but do I care enough to actually, like, contact this person? And the answer is no. Because I'm not going to go become, like, the Hebrew consultant for a Klingon Bible translations thing. Because, one, I don't have time for that. Two, I don't know enough Hebrew for that. And three, no one's going to read... Not enough people are going to read the Klingon translation of the Bible for it to matter. But Vadim Radchenko for €2 says...
got a readership of dozens.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, there are dozens of us Klingon speakers. Dozens.
Yes. Dozens.
Although I will say, I am actually spreading it. A number of people from my chat have been like, I just got my Klingon dictionary in the mail. I'm like, yes. Go learn Klingon, my minions. Vadim Radchenko for €2 says, well, first there's the Vishanti, but then Kip, master of Canada, which doesn't work as well with the song, but that's okay. But are you also a master of... Oh, it's the Dayman from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
No, it's
cool.
Flash Gordon.
Well, it's also that.
Flash. Like
that's true. But I actually, that's a good question. Vadim, are you referencing the use of that from It's Always Sunny or from Flash Gordon? Because I feel like most people are referencing Flash or It's Always Sunny now.
It's Always Sunny.
Yeah.
Because most people who used to watch Flash Gordon are probably no longer alive.
Or are George Lucas.
Just my parents'
or are
age.
George Lucas.
Oh, see, me permits
many people who are yours and my parents' age are no longer alive. That didn't make any sense, did it?
My mom's in her 60s. What are you talking
Okay, fine. But I think that's also true.
Becca Justiniano says that I know 16 Klingon speakers without Dapper or anyone in his server. That is surprising to me. That is
dozens.
Yeah,
is plural here, right? Not dozen. I said dozens.
Yeah. Meat Permits Tad says, I'm not learning Klingon for you. This is getting cult like. No, you shouldn't learn Klingon for me. You should learn Klingon for yourself.
So that you can read the Bible.
In Klingon.
Yeah, I actually introduced my mom to Flash Gordon at Dragon Con several years ago. She was very excited.
Nice.
All right. So,
Very good.
in case anyone is wondering, yeah, we are here primarily for the reactions, and we'll go through what we're drinking, and I'll remind everyone that there are drinking rules, and you don't have to play along if you don't want to. And then, let's see. So first, I am drinking a mojito out of a Mugato tiki mug. Because presentation is important for drinks. Vish, what are you drinking?
Coffee out of a yellow mug.
Okay. And Kip?
I just finished my coffee and I was drinking Pepto-Bismol because it's kind of one of those days. So,
Becca Justiniano must
we'll
live
see.
in Chicago because they said there's a Klingon theater group in my city, and as far as I know, the only Klingon theater group in the world is in Chicago. So, or at least the Chicago area. So, all right. So let's get into this after I remind everyone of a couple things. First of all, hey, if you want to play along with the drinking game, that is absolutely fine. Get yourself a nice beverage. And if you want to play along with something that isn't alcohol, you can obviously Kip and Vishanti aren't playing along with alcohol. That's fine too. You can get juice, tea, soda, water, wine, which is alcohol, whatever, non-alcoholic wine. Sure, there you go. See, I don't care. Oh, Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Well,
I
the
didn't.
stream's not over yet, so we'll see.
Didn't know there was a Klingon theater group in Minneapolis. Maybe I'm just out of the whole Klingon theater group scene. Anyway, so yeah, play along with any of those things, and that's fine. You can play along with eating a chip for each drink. I don't care, as long as you're having fun and being safe. Which reminds me, if you're going to play along with anything that's intoxicating, please be careful, know your limits, pace yourself, and don't go then out and, like, operate heavy machinery, drive a car, operate an aircraft, text your ex. These are bad ideas. Don't do them. All right.
Watch streams while drinking alcohol while driving.
Yeah, definitely don't mix all three of those. Yeah, and also don't film yourself while you're in your car talking about flat Earth. It's a really bad idea. But it seems like that's what. Did you see that? What's his name? The guy who's always in his basement, like handcuffed to his water heater.
Oh yeah.
That guy actually filmed himself in his car, and I was like, oh my god, he's able to go outside.
Wow.
I thought he was
the water heater in his car.
Yeah, seriously. What is that guy's name? I don't remember it. Anyway, yeah, he said that he's giving up on Flat Earth because just no one listens to him. It's like, oh, you don't say.
Oh, well, that's why you're
weep.
giving up on Flat Earth? Wow. Okay.
Actually,
Daniel Pratt.
Yeah, Daniel. Thank you, Daniel Pratt. Pillowpunk says biblical literalism necessitates absurdities. This is correct because the Bible is not internally non-contradictory, which means that if you want to take it literally, you have to find a way to combine mutually contradictory statements into some kind of harmony, which is not going to work well. But also, I'm going to set up a goal. Here we go. If we can get 20 teal super chats in the next hour,
just the next hour.
Gets
just an hour?
Free curse pass for today.
I get a what pass for today?
A free curse pass. You get to curse as much as you like.
Oh.
But only if we can get 20 teal super chats or more in the next hour.
I know what the people want to see.
Yeah.
Come on.
All right. So, meat permits. Tad comes in with with a super chat for $5, which seems like it's registering, but whatever. It takes a little while for it to set up, I guess. One of my favorite podcasts had a fake ad for Thunderbird Zero, the flavor you love with no alcohol. AIG is a waste pack of wangs with a Godzilla, and we will take a drink for that. Thank you very much.
Is that like a fanny pack? A waist pack?
I think so.
Yes.
I think they call it a bum bag in jolly old England.
Well, these were given in US dollars, though.
Doesn't mean they can't use other cultural references.
All right. Who would like to start us off with the first section of Chapter 26?
I'm still in this. I guess I can, but
I mean,
can
I'll
we
do
just
it if you don't feel well.
I can start, unless you really want to. We could just fight about it. But
No Ramda puts for $5 says, this super chat goal seems like a bad but interesting idea. Let's get it done.
Let's get her done.
let's do it. Can we just reflect for a minute on the fact that we're on chapter 26
Mm-hmm.
of this terrible book?
Yeah, which is not a
Chapter
terribly big book in the first place.
26. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, as Maya points out, I get to swear for free on her channel.
It's true. Maya does not keep a PG-13 channel going. To be fair, if you were on Top Hats Off, you would also get a free swear pass, because I also do not try to keep that at PG-13. Meat Permits Tat for $5 says, for the free cuss zone, which is different from the cuss-free zone. They're very different things.
I was at Dan McClellan's book signing tour thing last night, and I was telling several people about Kip's I effing love the Bible t-shirt.
Nice.
So, Kip, you may see a
So,
small spike
I'm
in those
gonna
sales.
be- I should look.
Yeah.
I'm going to see that I earned 78 more cents today than
Oh, wow.
There you go. Yeah, in case anyone is curious, merch, the profit margins for the creator on merch are slim.
they're kind of negligible.
But
Honestly.
here's the cool thing, though.
That's
But
the
merch
deal
is
with
fun,
on-demand printing stuff.
Do you realize how cool
Yep.
it is, though, when I get pictures of people wearing
Oh,
like a
yeah.
Dapper Dinosaur t-shirt, or showing off like a Dapper Dinosaur mug or blanket or pillowcase or something?
BTW.
Like, it's really cool.
I am-
BTW. Let
I
me
am
just
telling
say,
you. Okay.
if
Oh.
you subscribe to my Patreon, I will be retooling the Patreon levels soon, so that they're not like expensive-ish. But if you are subscribed to it for 3 months, you get a sticker with my logo on it,
Nice.
which you could then apply
Excellent.
to a thermos or a water bottle or a notebook or any other thing you want to put stickers on.
Kent the Bacteria Kind Halstead says, I put in a good word for you, to Dan for you. I don't know, talking about me. Well, I appreciate that. Dan seems cool. I would be cool to have Dan on sometime, or to go on Dan's show and talk about some of the weird things that young Earth creationists do to the Bible to twist it to fit their rather silly things.
Which Dan?
I'm assuming it was Dan McClellan, because we were talking about him.
I assumed Dan
Oh.
McClellan too.
I mean, I can just message him like at any point.
Yeah, but you know,
Okay, but yeah. More words for Dapper.
Yeah, more people saying Dapper's cool is better than just one person saying.
True,
All right.
true.
What are is PLN the Polish? Is that what PLN is again? I can't remember.
I don't know.
Well, for 25 of those, Pat Flippo says AIG is a bag of all the bad words Kip is going to say after we reach this goal. So I'll take a drink for that. And then Radim
And we all
Marchenko.
know that my superpower is that Dapper's so used to like chatting with me that he doesn't even hear it when I curse.
Radim Marchenko
We're
for
at,
€5 says, just drop the F's.
Yes.
Zlotys?
And
Okay.
I mean,
Polish zloty.
we
I
are
was
we
right.
are at 5, right?
5.
Actually, we are.
By the
we are
way,
at 5.
Speaking of other
I don't even know
cool
what that
people,
means.
the Bible Lore podcast is in the chat, which, hello,
hello.
we talked about you last night as
Really?
well. Several people love your podcast, and several people got to learn about it, so we were doing all the cross-promotion.
And
just
Kip
so you know.
cussed, but Dan didn't.
Yes. Did you see that? I cussed
I
on
didn't.
Hayden's podcast.
But here's what we're going to do. I think Vishanti should start us out. And then I will jump in, and then we will give Kip some time. So, Vishanti, you can start with all the Hebrew languages, which is sure is a sentence. I want to know what those are.
Wow.
Mhm.
Wow.
Go ahead, Vish. Let's see what we got.
Why?
You agreed to be
All
here.
the
You
Hebrew
knew.
languages.
Oh
Aramaic,
it gets
Arabic,
worse.
Hebrew, and so on.
And so on.
So basically, what he's doing is he's
there's
just
not-
saying Semitic languages.
Yes.
But for some reason,
Yes.
he needs to say that
But
those
they're
are
all Hebrew
okay.
languages.
Ah!
Does that mean that he thinks that Biblical Hebrew is actually the root language for all of the Semitic languages?
See, I'm sticking
Flush and
with my
Kodesh
prediction
confirmed.
that Hebrew was the original language.
All right, Meat Permit Stat for $5 says, Vish, I'm just gonna say y'all here so you can curse about it in 15 more super chats.
Because he knows that if you put the apostrophe between the A and
In
the
the
L,
wrong
I get
place.
upset. Yeah.
Very.
Yeah, it should
I
be
understand
Y
your
apostrophe.
tricks.
It's a trigger.
Triggered.
All right, so
Man.
keep going forward, Vish. That first sentence, that first sentence is worth a drink, though. We're drinking for that one.
Yes, it is. God, why didn't I put anything in this?
Oh,
coffee?
Naramda Put says, did the chapter title get read? I think it did, but the chapter title is "What was the original language?"
It didn't get read.
Oh,
Well, I'm reading it right now. What was the original language? And how was Moses able to read such text when he wrote Genesis? To put a nice big pause in there because there's an ellipsis in the title.
An ellipsis instead of a freaking comma, which is what they should have used.
It's like the title
Yeah.
to one of my favorite Neil Breen movies. I Am Here. Now.
Except worse. Except much worse.
Yeah, because this
Right?
is a much longer title. Metageeky
Yeah.
Platypus Warlock for $5 says,
Unnecessarily
a
longer.
feat of myself, so I work on this library system during the stream. May I not Ghidorah this bento config? Also, AIG is a cyst of vast deference. Oh, things I don't want to have to deal with is a vast deference cyst.
How do I go back to 2 minutes ago when I didn't read that sentence?
I know. Goodness.
That means you have to go back to
What?
all the Hebrew languages, Vish.
in fact, really, if you want to say that you can speak Hebrew,
It's
you're
a
going to have to
no-brainer.
learn all of the Semitic languages. So
It's
you're
true.
going to need to learn every variety of Arabic. You're going to need to learn all those tiny little Semitic languages spoken in little villages out in the far southeastern part of the Arabian Peninsula. Sopotri from Socotra,
Syriac.
the island, Syriac. You're going to have to learn Ge'ez, Amharic,
Yes.
Tigrinya. It's going to be a big project to learn all the Semitic
rough.
languages.
Rough.
Also, there's Akkadian. You're going to have to learn Akkadian. So there's that too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Ugaritic.
Ugaritic. Yep.
Ugaritic.
I hate
Yeah.
everything about this. Okay.
Mhm.
By the
'Cause
way,
otherwise-
Do 3 says we've never had a put in your keys moment in the first sentence.
All right, let's get that second sentence in here.
Hate all this. Okay, all the Hebrew languages have varied from each other. Hebrew today versus biblical Hebrew all show that Hebrew is not immune to changes down the ages. What would it even mean to have a language immune from changes? I'm screaming. By the way, the Bible Lore podcast says, I think Neil Breen should make a Bible movie. He's got the juice.
Well,
He's got the juice.
to be fair, I Am Here now does have Neil Breen playing Jesus, basically. So, I would argue that I Am Here now is basically his Bible movie, where he plays alien techno Jesus, who is both an alien, a cyborg, and Jesus.
I mean, why not?
Naramda Puts, who's been a member for 19 months, is at the Tetrapod level, says, a language that doesn't change is a dead language. Even that's iffy, right? Because Latin has changed since it stopped being the mother tongue of basically anyone. You can go find the official Latin word for things like motorcycle and computer. That's because people at the Vatican keep up with hey, we need a new word for this thing because we need to be able to refer to it in Latin because for some reason we've decided to keep with Latin being the official language of the Vatican, even though most conversations in the Vatican take place in Italian, not in Latin. But the ATMs are still in Latin. The ATMs are still in Latin, though.
I mean,
yeah, it's Church Latin.
If the future Pope Pizza Ballin is a motorcycle
Balla.
rider,
Pierre Batista Pizza Balla
Yes,
should win based on his name alone
seriously, and then not change it. I want to
and not change it.
I want to Pope Pizza Balla.
Pope Pizza Balla. That's right. That's right. Okay.
all right.
But to answer this question, let's consider what the original language could possibly have been.
Ooh,
I just
all of
love the idea that there was an original language.
yeah. Right-handed Sith does point out that I said ATM machines. Now, I'm going to say that the idea of an original language, at least a language from which all modern languages that are extant derive, is actually not absolutely crazy. There are real linguists who do
Yeah.
publish real work who are not cranks, who are trying to reconstruct some idea of what
The
they
original.
call a
some-
proto-world. And they have made some interesting, like, very, very distant cross-linguistic sort of connections. They're not sufficient to actually demonstrate that proto-world exists, but it is a hypothesis that is being taken seriously in historical linguistics right now, that there could be a language from which all modern existing languages have derived. Which does not mean all languages ever spoken, right? Because there are definitely languages that went extinct before we ever even knew they existed. And we don't know if they go back to an even earlier language
Fair.
or a separate linguistic
Yeah.
history.
I
But-
was gonna say the Bible Lore podcast is very much
Noam
accurate. Like, wasn't
Chomsky's,
this just Noam Chomsky's argument? And
Yeah, to some extent,
Yeah.
yeah. Kent the Bacteria Kind Halstead for $4.99 says, taking the Bible literally is still an executive decision, like any other interpretation. Nothing in the Bible demands it. Also true. Yeah, you just have to choose to do that. You don't have to.
yeah, it's a choice.
You can. And if you do, you will be troublesome for you. But here we go. Let's keep going.
I'm so upset that I'm having to take the psychic damage of reading this first.
Well, let's-
All modern languages developed from the root languages at the Tower of Babel. There's been linguistic variation within the distinct kinds of languages.
Kinds
since
of
Babel.
languages. Did you see what
Uh-huh.
he did there? Kinds
Uh-huh.
of languages.
Kinds.
Yeah.
In other words, all languages today are not descended from one ancestral language by natural processes, but due to God's intervention.
yes, I forgot.
Wow.
God
There's no
created-
evolution by natural
I'm
selection in language.
I'm waiting to see this demonstration.
Okay. The Bible has not given us a clear indication of what the original language before Babel may have been, but by God, I'm gonna make up some shit about it. Here are some relevant passages. The Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the sons of men had built. The Lord said, behold, they are one people, and they all have the same languages, and this is what they began to do, and now nothing which they purpose to do will be impossible for them. Come, let us go down, and there confuse the language, so that they will not understand one another's speech. So the Lord scattered them abroad from there over the face of the whole earth, and they stopped building the city. Therefore, its name is called Babel, because the Lord confused the language of the whole earth, and from there the Lord scattered them abroad over the face of the whole earth. Genesis 11:5-9 ASB. There are other passages directly related to language in these events. Now the whole earth
Can
is
I
the same language as the same words. Genesis 11:1 NASB.
Can I just point out that the root of the scroll back up a little bit there, Dapper. The root of the verb meaning confused is balal.
I was literally
And,
about to go pull this up.
Oh, are you?
Yeah.
And so he's making a fun play on here, right? Play on words. Baval with balal. It's cute.
Yeah, that's the thing about, like,
So-
when I tell people, if you really want to fall in love with the text, you need to learn the original language, or at least, at the bare minimum, learn how to pronounce the letters that you're reading, even if you don't have the vocabulary for it, because you'll pick
Right.
up all the verbal puns.
Now, here's the
Right.
question, though.
Very true.
Is
Okay.
this actually written in the original language, or was the original language whatever was before Babel that it really should have been written?
I'm
like-
sticking with my idea
That it was
that the
Hebrew?
original language was Hebrew. Yeah.
Which is,
See,
Okay.
I'm saying we got 2 votes for Lashon Kodesh here.
look,
Let's go.
if that's what
Interesting.
it ends up being, because I'm gonna say, I'm not gonna say that that's definitely what's going on until Bode says it. But if that's what it actually is, boy, is that gonna be hard to support linguistically.
Oh.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, what I was going to say is if you go back and read the text in Hebrew, you get this nice little thing. Babel, Kisham, Balal.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like wordplay. So,
Puns even.
yeah,
Mhm.
puns.
Alright.
You get a lot of those if you read the original language. There are other passages directly related to language in these events. Now the whole earth used the same language and the same words. Genesis 11 and ASB. From these the coastlands of the nations were separated into their lands, everyone according to his language, according to their families, into their nations. Genesis 10:5 and ASB.
That doesn't support that at
Wait a
all.
minute.
But sure, whatever.
No, it
Wait
doesn't.
a minute, though. Like,
No, it doesn't.
can we call Genesis 11:1 a different passage from Genesis 11:5-9?
No.
Yeah, there's 3 verses between there. There's this 2, 3, and 4. You can't. Yeah,
Oh,
Shut up.
It's
what?
Don't worry
Here.
about it.
Fearmongers for $5 says, Bode, we jest that Klingon is the original language, but we don't actually think there's one ancestral language. Also, can I get a F-bomb from Kip? No, not yet. Actually, you could use your free F-bomb right now if you wanted to.
Oh, I've got a free one.
Yeah, we always start out with one free one.
Okay. Right, that's true.
Vadim Marchenko, who's been a member for 5 months and is at the Tetrapod level, says, spoiler, the original language is Gobbo, with what looks like an Oni mask. Well, I'm sure that Chesh would be very happy to hear that the original language is Goblin. And Chesh is in the chat with her Debate Hub channel. Hi, Chesh.
I was on Chesh's channel like 2 days ago.
Chesh was producing for my other channel just yesterday.
Right.
Mhm.
That's right.
So go check out Top Hats Off from yesterday. Played Star Trek.
Go watch Debate Hub if you like Canadian politics.
Don't
Or if you don't, you
Canadian
just want to support the channel. So
Hey, I watched. I mean, I was lurking most of the time because I was doing other stuff, but I was watching Chesh's coverage of the election.
I was not. Well, I popped in because I was actually supervising vote counting at my polling station, which took until 11:30 p.m.
Yeah.
So yes.
Kent the Bacteria Kind Halstead for $4.99 says, my prediction, look, Aleph and Alpha, A, no further elaboration for any other language. It's gonna all just be based on the fact that most alphabets derive from the same root alphabet. There you go. Yeah.
Shout out Phoenicians and Egyptians. Really
Right-handed
doing the heavy lifting.
Right-handed Sis says that the original language was Dovazul. Okay, look, I am not going to accept that the original language was just a relex of English, because that's all Dovazul is. It doesn't even have a unique phonology. It has the same exact phonemes, syllable structure, and phonotactics as English. It even maintains rhymes between word-for-word translations from English to Dovazul. It's not a language.
Word for word?
Word for word. Every single word in English, in an English sentence, is directly translatable into a single word in a Dovazul sentence that functions in the exact same semantic role and often rhymes with the same words in Dovazul that those words rhyme with in English. Specifically, so that way, when they write a little song with rhyming couplets, it still works in the fake dragon language. Dovazul is not a language. It is a relex of English, and it is a nakedly transparent.
It's just a Caesar cipher of English.
Basically, yeah. The only thing that Dovazul has going for it is that you cannot predict the lexical entry for an English word just based on the English word. So you do actually have to memorize the vocabulary in order to use Dovazul as it's used in Skyrim. But, like, you don't need to learn any new grammar if you're a native English speaker. It's literally one word to one word equivalence. Complete with weird things like case exists in pronouns, but, like, not in other things, if I remember correctly. Like, it's just English. Meat Permits Tad for $5 says the original language was Hyper-French. Fight me in Temecula. I hope the original language wasn't ultra or hyper or ultra French.
No, I know what it was. Centaur.
Well, let's see what Bode says it is. Because he's got 4 likely possibilities.
And none of them are Santa.
Well.
Ugh. Gosh. Okay. So the likely possibilities are 1. The original language could have been one of the languages that survived through the Tower of Babel. 2. The original language was preserved through Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, but not the others' descendants. That's just the same as 1.
Isn't it? Right?
Yeah, it's exactly the same as 1. And also, who are the descendants that aren't descended from these 4? Because
literally,
according to Bode, that's just everyone.
Everyone.
I'm just taking a drink for Bodhi's number 2, not only not making sense, but also being covered by number 1.
This is so ridiculous. 3. The original language could have been completely lost at the Tower of Babel with new languages taking its place. 4. All the languages that came out of Babel could have been combined into one big original language, and it was divided into the sub-languages of Babel, or some of the sub-languages. Basically, everyone knew all the languages, and then they were subdivided after that.
What is that?
The biggest Uno reverse card. Like, no, they weren't created out of whole cloth. They all always existed.
What is?
Okay,
Like-
no one who understands linguistics in the most basic sense could think that that is a sentence that, or a phrase, set of sentences that makes any sense. You can't just have all the languages in one big language and then just pick and choose from them. Languages arrange information in many ways that are fundamentally different from other languages, and you can't just swap them all over the place, right? Like, if I start using like Japonic pronouns and then I jump into like a I don't know, Semitic verb pattern and then finish it off with like some like Turkic agglutinized nouns, like that's not going to be a coherent sentence. Like those categories aren't going to match up. You're not going to know where does this pronoun refer to which part of the sentence, and how are we marking case and syntactic function.
I'm
and
screaming right now. Vadim's like Megazord language.
seriously.
Wow.
Okay, so that one's
kinda
impossible.
It kind of feels like Bode might know less about languages than Dr. David A.C. Hillman.
Look,
Kind of feels like that.
Bode certainly does. Look, Amon Hillman is a
Mm.
crazy crank who doesn't know nearly as much Greek as he likes to pretend he does. But he knows some Greek.
But at least he knows some Greek.
He knows some.
Yeah.
I can guarantee you that
Fair.
Bode knows less about linguistics than you would learn from having aced high school Spanish.
Which I did.
That's
Oh.
fair.
Wayward Super Cold Space Scythe for $1.99 says, but have you considered far be it indeed? I had not considered that, to be fair. And then Dutchman that's never saw snow tunicate, who's been a member for 12 months, that's an entire trip around the sun, says, so Bode is monolingual,
Bode is
clearly.
monolingual.
Oh yeah. I would be shocked to find that Bode's linguistic capacity goes any further than
Dapper. You
yes.
skipped the super chat. Kyle Pratt for
Oh, I did.
$4.99 says, I just got confirmation last week that I'm Canadian. My mom moved to the USA when she was 2, but that was enough for Canada. Dual citizen!
Nice,
Mazel tov.
well done. Yeah, unfortunately, my grandmother having moved before my mom was born is not sufficient for me. So,
Dang.
yeah, it's almost never enough to have a grandparent for another country in terms of getting like citizenship through family connections. Pretty much always it has to be a parent in order for that to work.
Hashtag Mexico. They let you use grandparents.
Well, if only I had Mexican grandparents.
Wow.
Get good.
Okay, so Dutch Mammoths Never Saw Snow Tunicate said, so Bode is monolingual, clearly. Yeah. I imagine that Bode's linguistic capacity does not stretch any further in terms of other languages than English, beyond, like, being able to give some basic greetings in Spanish and Like, he probably knows, like, bonjour and hola, and maybe he knows, like, por favor and, like, gracias, and a few things like that. Like,
Grazie.
that I don't think he knows grazie. Like,
So
I don't think he knows any
he
Italian.
probably doesn't know li faudra.
Right-handed Sith, who's been a member for 26 months. My goodness. The amulet level says, correction, Herr Dapper Chan. Oh, I don't know if I like Herr Dapper Chan. That's too much. Nope. I don't know if I can deal with that one. That's a lot. Oh, but there's a Mothra, so we'll drink for the Mothra. All right, let's keep going after we've discussed why number 4 is something that
Also,
only a monolingual person could say.
It's even dumber because Bode being a young
It
Earth
is.
creationist and a Bible literalist,
It is.
making this assertion that possibly all the languages existed and then were just like isolated from each other. That's just the young Earth creationist version of language. The way they do the same, like, well, maybe Adam and Eve had all the traits for every human thing ever, and then they just got isolated.
Oh, you're
later
right.
on.
You're right. And you know what I just realized? Bode thinks that all languages just have the same grammar as English because he's never even considered that idea.
Right?
Yeah.
And so he
Yeah.
thinks
Yes.
that all it takes to learn
just-
Greek or Spanish or Hebrew is to just learn all the words, and then you can just
Right.
string them together like it's an English sentence.
I actually
my
think
God.
Bode has the same understanding of language that I did when I was 8 years old and just replaced all the letters of the alphabet with different symbols
And now you made a
and
new language.
provided different sounds
Ooh.
to them. right?
Hey, just
And
like
I was careful
just like
to
the
make
creators
sure
of
vowels were
Skyrim.
vowels,
Yep.
right? So, but
Well, no, they did a
I
little bit more work
suspect
than
that
that, but not by much.
Bode's on that level.
Yeah, he might be a little bit more advanced than that, but it seems like he's not far off from that. I would say he's definitely not more advanced than the devs of Skyrim who just re-lexified English in order to make their own conlang. Definitely is not more advanced than that. Alright, so if number 1 is correct, was the original language a Semitic language? Bode, why could you say Semitic language here, but then up here you had to say Hebrew languages? What the hell, man? I'm taking another drink. What the? How do you?
Oh, by the way, did Vish read that last sentence about there being no writings?
Oh my god.
Here we go.
Since we do not have any writings from that time pre-Babel, the original language may be difficult to ascertain. Let's take a closer look at each of these and see their respective plausibility. Also, didn't he earlier make an assertion that Moses was carrying on records or tablets from Adam and that they went on the ark? So pick a lane.
Well, here he's going to address the linguistics of that question, which he's completely unequipped to do. Dutch man that's never saw a snow tunic for $5 says, Bode knows less about languages than I did when I was in middle school and was annoyed with people just switching words for a new language. Yeah, look, it does not take a lot of linguistics knowledge to know that is not how languages work generally.
I want to go with what low energy videos in chat says. Like maybe it was Simlish. So.
All right. If number 1 is correct, or should I say hashtag 1? No, I'll say number 1. If number 1 is correct, was the original language a Semitic language? Gee, I don't know, Bode. Was it? If one language survived, the most likely scenario would be that it was a Semitic language, since the Hebrews, who were Semites.
No!
Don't say that.
No, they were not. Nobody is a Semite. I don't care what a bunch of racist people said in the 19th century to try to dress up their Judenhass.
Sounds like we should take a drink.
No one has ever been a Semite. Semitic is a language family.
You could say Semitic
it's not
speakers.
A people group.
You could say they were Semitic speakers.
But yeah, when people are like, but the word anti-Semite means against Semites, so there must be a group of people that are Semite. No. Stop. I'm going to roll up a newspaper and hit you on the snout. No.
But anyway, the Hebrews were blessed by God. Of course, Abraham, who was blessed in Genesis 18:18 to the first power, who was but one of the Hebrew speakers and not called until long after the events of Babel. Okay, here's one of the problems with Abraham being a Hebrew speaker.
He was called a Hebrew because he Avar, he crossed over the river. Wasn't he from Ur? What language were they speaking in Ur? It wasn't Hebrew.
It probably would have been Akkadian around the time that is depicted. And the other problem is, we also know that Hebrew wasn't a distinct language long before we see a Israelite identity coming up in Canaan archaeologically. So the idea that Abraham, even if we assume that he was a historical character, which there's no good reason to assume that, but let's just grant that he was a historical character and that he actually existed more or less as depicted in the Bible. He would not have been speaking Hebrew. He probably would have been a native Akkadian speaker who might have picked up some Canaanite languages at best, but Hebrew didn't even exist as a separate language. In fact, it's not even all that clear that it existed as a separate language by the time that the earliest bits of the Bible are being written. It's still basically just a slight variation on the same language that they're speaking in Ugarit. Right? So the idea that Abraham was a Hebrew speaker is just there's no way.
Pure and utter nonsense.
There is no way to come at this, even from a biblical literalist standpoint, and come away with, oh yeah, Abraham was a Hebrew speaker. The only way I could see doing that is if you confuse the word Hebrew and all of its uses with just the word meaning the language, which, spoiler alert, that's not how that word functions. That word is not just synonymous with the speakers of that language. If this were the case, there is a possibility that Noah's descendants could easily have read previous documents passed down from the patriarchs back to Adam.
Did he not just say we don't have documents pre-flood?
Yes, but he says that Moses did, because Moses had the journals, basically, of Adam and
I like how-
Noah, at least.
I like how he could have easily done this.
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
Right.
Easily.
Because everyone's just carrying around their hundreds of years old clay tablets with them everywhere they go.
Mhm.
Because it wasn't like, yeah. So
I mean, that's just what you do. The presence of 11 toledotes. Hey, Bode, that word is already plural.
That word's already plural.
yeah.
You wouldn't say Chinese's.
I'm just going to take a drink for trying to pluralize the already plural word.
Oh my god, it gets
hate
worse.
this.
Keep reading,
All right.
reading, Dapper.
The presence of the 11, I'm just going to say toledote, because it's already plural,
Yes.
in Genesis, and the fact that Genesis 5:1 says, this is the book...
The Kefir!
Kefer? Okay. The normal Hebrew word for Seph, is that what he's... How is he
it's
trying...
be
Supposed to
Sefer.
be Sefer, but he
Yes.
Latinized that in a bonkers way.
Wow, did he
Okay.
ever?
Here-
Like, how did he?
Pro tip for everyone out there. If you are Latinizing a language, right, so that you're trying to transcribe some language into the Latin alphabet for speakers of a language who typically use the Latin alphabet, the one letter you should never use on its own, at least, is C. Because C is an
Superfluous ass
intensely
letter.
ambiguous letter. And
Fair.
many languages use it for different sounds. English uses it for at least 3 sounds, one with a digraph, usually. Just don't use it. If you want to have a S sound, just use S. If you want to have a K sound, just use K. And if you absolutely need to use C, maybe use it for a sound like sh or ch, if you're trying to avoid digraphs. But even then, you should probably put a diacritic on there so that English speakers don't just assume it's a C.
How did he get here? Like,
I have
seriously,
no idea.
We know. I'm fairly confident he wasn't looking at
it's probably
the word Sefer
Footnote 2. I'm gonna-
in.
Oh no, he
Let's look
doesn't.
at that.
He can't do that. A
A
Toledo,
Toledote.
yeah, which that's already plural. No,
I cannot
just drink.
a Toledote. Y'all, this is the one thing that I get irritated. I have to physically restrain myself. Anytime someone, I know it's by accident, I'm trying not to assume it's by ignorance, just they'll type a, meaning one of something, and then a plural noun. A women?
Mhm.
That drives me up the wall.
That's
A
actually-
Toledote.
women is actually a really good example because him saying Toledotes, that's like saying women's. It's silly.
Yep.
Don't. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Or it's like saying mice's. Like why are you saying that? Don't do that. All right. So, I'm just gonna say Toledote are basically the accounts of generations of someone or a time period, almost as though it were signed off. No, Bode. The
No,
only
that's
reason
not how that works.
the
No.
only reason you think this
No.
is because you feel like you need to account for somehow transmitting historically accurate records down to the guy that you think compiled these books, right? Literally, other than your dogmatic assertion that these books were compiled and or written by Moses, depending on which section we're talking about, there is no reason to think that when it says these are the generations of, that was that person signing off. It's literally just what you already said it was. On account of the generations. That's the redactor, most likely, of Genesis, in my opinion, saying, okay, well, we're done with this story. Let's go on to the next patriarch. Because you remember, like, from the primeval history all the way through basically the rest of Genesis, we're just tracing a series of patriarchs through time. Right? Other than Genesis, like, 1 and 2, which are sort of like before Adam to some extent, once we get into, like, the stories of Adam and Eve, from then on, it's just tracing history, well, this mytho-history through different patriarchs. And so when the author says, okay, well, we're done with, well, or more likely the redactor says, okay, well, we're done with the story of this patriarch, they put that section in so you know that. So that you know we're going to switch to the next guy. All right, many Christians believe, many researchers believe, just going full ancient aliens.
Theorists propose.
Yeah, that these Toledote, I'm just going to ignore that S, are where a particular set of recorded history was derived from pre-existing texts of Moses to edit together a book made of Genesis. So here's the thing. When he says many Christians, I literally have never encountered anyone saying this who wasn't at some point affiliated with Answers in Genesis. I don't even know of anyone from ICR doing this. Now, that doesn't mean they don't. Trixie Solus Dyslexic Purple says, what is the singular of Toledot? Toled?
Toledo.
Yalad or Yelad.
No.
Toleda. Yeah, I mean, it's like
Toledo.
Yeah, Toleda.
Toleda.
So,
It
generally
comes
speaking...
from Yalad, which means like beget or not sire, but...
So, the oat
The
is
purple
a...
form does.
The oat is a plural feminine marker, and the singular feminine marker is usually a. So generally speaking, if you see a word where the plural form is like oat, like it also comes up in Sukkot, hence Sukkah is the singular.
Shmote.
Yeah. So anyway,
From Shem meaning name, which is the second book of the Bible, names.
at no
because
point-
it opens with a bunch of names.
at no point in this does he actually tell us where he gets Sefer with a C. So like, yeah, okay, great. He's just gonna put it in there anyway.
Oh no!
So
Okay.
I just
The
I'm
genealogy
sorry,
of the genealogy
I'm-
Toledot of Adam brackets mine.
Bode, the point of using square brackets is because
God.
they're yours. I'm taking a drink. I just can't with this.
Wow. So I'm just trying to imagine how this happened because I can't I can't believe that he's actually looking at the Hebrew word
No,
sefer,
absolutely no.
right? So he must have seen this somewhere,
Probably.
Latinized, and decided no, the C is a better choice here than the letter S.
I think it's
for
possible.
real.
I think it's possible that he saw someone's ancient book about the Bible, because remember, Bode has like cited things from like, this
Yes.
Bible commentary from 1892. What?
Yes.
Why are you? My
Yeah.
guess is that there's some book from way back in like 18 whatever, where someone put
That
in
has done
English
this.
without, and probably either before there was an official Latinization that Hebraists were using, and was just coming up with his own Latinization and went with Sefer with a C. And Bode was like, "Oh, I guess that's just how that's how you spell that word in
How
English."
you do it.
Young Earth creationists always on the cutting edge of any field.
Hey guys, there are like official Latinization schemes for Hebrew that you can learn about in like a Hebrew class. Where
Why would they learn about stuff? They
Yeah,
could
that's
just
a good point.
make it up.
Yeah, that's a good point. Pillowpunk, half dog, half canine for $5 says it's getting harder and harder to tell the difference between Bode Hodge and Matt Nyler. Yeah. I'll say this: Bode Hodge has not, to my knowledge, mocked the death of cancer patients for not having taken his ridiculous herbal concoctions that will stop you from aging and prevent all cancer ever. So I'm still going to give Bode Hodge the win in the contest between Matt Nyler and Bode Hodge. At least Bode Hodge isn't doing that. Might not. Matt Nyler has definitely done. So, yeah. Meat Permits Tan for $5 says my couch cover popped off on the second use of Toledotes. My furniture is rebelling against this book.
Even the furniture will cry out.
Seriously. All right. So anyway, the presence of 11 Toledotes, blah 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 blah, is strong evidence that when Moses compiled Genesis into its present form, he was working with existing written documents passed on from the patriarchs. No, it's not evidence of that at all.
It sure isn't. It really
It's
really is not.
At best, it doesn't contradict that possibility. That's at best. It doesn't actively contradict the idea.
Wow.
This is different from
Strong
a JED.
evidence.
This is different from the JEDP hypothesis.
The JEDP hypothesis, otherwise known as the documentary hypothesis.
Which is largely discredited.
It's my favorite modern myth of critical
my
biblical studies
God.
that the documentary hypothesis has been largely discredited. Like
Okay.
seriously, fuck you, Bode.
Here's
and
the free
fuck
one.
everyone
Oh
else.
my goodness.
Who's,
Now we need the
that counts.
No, it
it's
counts as
just,
two.
I'm so
It counts as
look,
two.
I'm
Guys,
so
help out Kip with the
tired.
curse
I'm
fund.
so tired of hearing this shit. I can say that.
Understandably.
Right? Just because and here's the stupid thing about this, okay? This is the Michael Jones level of stupidity on this idea that because there are challenges to Julius Wellhausen's formulation of the documentary hypothesis from the 19th century, that must mean that it's somehow now been discredited. When in actual fact, what they fail to acknowledge, like, for example, Michael Jones promotes himself as a proponent of the supplementary hypothesis because he thinks that there was a core of material written by Moses to
Of course.
which has been supplemented over time, added on to some minor changes, to update the language or some of the place names, some verbal glosses put in there. No. This is not a supplementary hypothesis. In actual fact, real supplementary hypotheses which have provided legitimate challenges to the documentary hypothesis are far and away much more damaging to the idea of the text being univocal or having some sort of origins back in the Bronze Age than even the documentary hypothesis, because at least Wellhausen's version of the documentary hypothesis continued to hold that there were texts as early as the 10th century, and no one thinks that anymore, anywhere.
Yeah. We have a couple
Okay,
super
I'm done.
chats. Naramda puts for $5 says hashtag free kip with one too few P's though. So we can only
Right? That's-
free
Wow.
quarters of you. The last quarter of you has to remain in bondage. I'm sorry. Sapphire Magical Wolf Paws Light for $5 says hashtag kip unleashed with the appropriate number of P's.
Thank
Also,
you.
So
I just want to say that this exact topic came up last night at Dan McClellan's book tour talk, where all these apologists are saying, oh, the documentary hypothesis has been debunked. And they're teaching that in seminaries. And the only reason they say that is because in the Academy of Biblical Scholars who are doing work, they examined, the original core claims of the documentary hypothesis. And they were like, I don't think there's a strong case to make that the J and E sources can be differentiated. Like, they're probably not two separate things. And that made its way downstream to all the other people who aren't in the Academy as, oh, it's been debunked. When in reality, it was just going, hey, this one specific part is probably not two separate sources.
we
Can't divide them like that.
So the other thing to point out here is that challenges also tend to rest on this term documentary, where a lot of scholars do not like the idea of there being actual large scale expansive texts, documents. You guys should go watch, if you haven't watched it already, the interview that I had, the conversation I had with David Carr, where we go over a bunch of this stuff.
Yeah.
And one of the things that he points out, and that I tend to agree with, is that one of the things that scholars tend to be widely agreed upon. Is that right? One of the things about which scholars agree with widely in this conversation is that all these models are on some level artificial. This is just the way that we're, trying to deal with the material in terms that make some sense. And I particularly like the documentary hypothesis for how much more cleanly it considers the source material. It looks a lot messier when you get into some of the supplementary models.
Yeah.
But all scholars recognize that at the heart of it, this stuff it's goddamn messy.
Yeah.
So even though we're using models like this, and even though everyone is generally agreed that there's some kernel of truth to this, like most will happily concede that there's such a thing as priestly material.
Oh yeah.
That exists, right? in and apart from anything that you could consider non-priestly and also separately Deuteronomic. And it's just a way of trying to categorize and catalog a lot of these observations that all scholars are making.
But how many of the source texts are Judaistic? It's the word that we know that Bode knows very well.
Hey, Dapper, I just noticed you have
Yeah.
14K subs.
I do. That's true.
Oh,
That's pretty cool.
Thank you.
that's
Hawk Skull for £2 says, funding your cusses, Kip. With, again, not quite enough P's, but Goopdo3 comes in with $5, says, don't worry, I gotcha.
Guys.
And then hands in a P. The 3 more I'm seeing, but that's okay.
Yeah, but the first one didn't get counted.
Yeah, so it doesn't count. So we need 3 more.
No, dude,
We're doing it.
you're doing this wrong.
No, I'm not.
Anyways,
So one thing that I just noticed is that this is basically the exact same argument. This has been debunked as when a flat earther says that Einstein debunked Newton.
Yes.
yes, right?
Yes.
Yes,
It's
exactly that.
When I
Exactly.
tell people that young Earth creationism and flat Earth are just two sides of the same coin, and that the only real differences are 1, how easy it is to debunk, 2, how well funded and popular it is, and 3, like how recent it is. Those really are. It's the same fundamental thought patterns. Like, oh, I'm sorry. Did you say that there were scholarly challenges to the original, over 100-year-old hypothesis about the documentary nature of the Torah? Well, I guess that means the entire thing's debunked then. Get wrecked, globetards. It's exactly the same thing. Like, in fact, I've actually heard creationists say evotards. That's a thing that I've heard. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Nothing says high
Meaning,
class
if your hypothesis didn't come out perfectly formed
the first time.
the first time, then it's all incorrect.
Mhm. Yep. Also,
Yep.
nothing says I am a classy intellectual, like using the R slur as a portmanteau as part of a portmanteau. Yep.
Sure is.
Yup. By the way, I do in fact ban variations on that, and if you find one that I haven't found yet, I'll ban that one too, and there's a fair chance that if you persist on using it in chat, which no one has, as far as I can tell, you might get a ban, because we don't allow that as just a general thing. I have already banned every version of creationist with the hard appellation attached to it that I have encountered. So, here we go. Given the Genesis testimony to the great intelligence of pre-flood man, example,
Oh.
Adam naming animals, Cain building a city, what about that
What?
requires great intelligence? Does Bode not know that people build cities now? And that they can name animals now? That, like, scientists go out into the world and name new animals? Like, does he not know these things?
So we know what's going on here, right? We understand this.
Okay.
What Bode is doing, just to make this clear, what Bode is doing is buying into this idea that because scholars will show us that within antiquity people believed mythology,
Mhm.
and they held to certain ideas which we now recognize are, they're not naturally accurate, right?
Right.
You know,
They're not literal
when-
truths about the actual history of the world.
not literal truths, or even just truths about nature, right?
Right.
Like the like lightning bolts from the sky are not actually the god hurling, his weapon to the earth. It's not
How
actually that.
dare you insult Thor like that?
Right?
And Zeus.
Thor knows where I live, so he
I swear to
he
God,
can come at me.
if Kip's house burns down within the next week after a lightning strike, I am
Or
going
if
to
it
become a
gets lightning
neo-pagan.
struck.
Yeah, all of us should. All of us should at that point.
I mean, at that point,
But,
Thor was challenged and provided evidence. So, like, what are you going to do?
But what's happening here is Bode looks, and creationists and biblical literalists look at stuff like that in general, in the vein, and they say they interpret from that scholars must think that everyone who lived in antiquity was a moron.
No, they
Because
don't.
who could ever think that, lightning was actually, weaponry that was cast down from the sky by divine beings? Like, that's just dumb. So, and we know that's dumb. So nobody ever actually believed that. It's this weird sort of, they like to use this word. I've heard this word a few times, presentism.
Yeah.
Look,
which basically
there is a
posits that,
there is a real idea behind presentism, right? That we judge the past
Sure.
according to the
Yeah.
ideas of the present, which is not an appropriate thing to do,
Yeah.
right? Like, we
No,
don't get to go and
totally.
say like, oh, the reason that I really dislike Julius Caesar is because he didn't abolish slavery. Like, that wasn't anything anyone was ever going to do at the time. I'm sorry. And like, would it have been cool if he had? Yeah, but I can't condemn him for not having done so like 2,000 years ago. It's not a reasonable expectation to have for someone 2,000 years ago. We have a few super chats here. So let's see. Regios for $5 says, I'm sure Kip will need the pass from what I have heard so far. Then, which by the way, we did get the pass, so you do now have a free pass for the next hour.
Fucking right.
Exactly. Meat Permits Tad says, as an autistic person, the common usage of the R slur in both skeptical and believer content is so hurtful. I appreciate your efforts to curtail it. I'm glad that you do. I obviously can't control what anyone else is doing out there, but I can control what's in my chat. And that, by the way,
this channel operates on the Bill and Ted principle of be excellent to each other.
Yeah,
Be excellent.
I mean, there are people with whom I would say maybe you can withhold that, but that's people who are, like, actively working to destroy the lives of others for no reason other than because they want to. But yeah, for the most part, be excellent to each other. And that involves things like not using hurtful slurs for what? I don't even know what the motive is. Kent, the Bacteria Kind Halstead for $4.99 says, Kip, please, have you considered same evidence, different worldview? Oh, good point. And then Regios for $5 says, Kip, free to tell what he really thinks yet? And yes, he is.
I fucking rights I am.
All right, so here's what we're gonna do. Actually, do you guys need a break? Because I currently still have most of my drink left. All right, let's keep going then.
Hey yo, Apologia.
Hey, Paul. How's it going, Paul? One of these days,
welcome to the dumb.
One of these days, when one of my guests can't be here, we should just have Paul on.
Agreed. Hey, Paul, you should come on the React show one time.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. Cain building a city. 6 generations later, man is mining, having discovered metallurgy and invented musical instruments. Noah's ability to build the ark. None of these actually indicate like hyper intelligence. That they just don't. There is no reason to think the pre-flood man could not write. Adam was created with the ability to speak, so why not write also? Okay, so here's the reason why, right? We have archaeological finds that even by young Earth creationist recalibrations, because creationists have their own like bespoke calibration curve for carbon-14 dating. I don't know if you know about this, Kit. But it's very ridiculous. But even if we accept their recalibration, we still have archaeological sites from areas where writing is known that predate our oldest known writing. Right?
Sure.
So even if we accept their recalibration of dating techniques because they have to fit a whole bunch of very early history into like the 100 or so years after the flood, which is like all of Old Kingdom in Egypt or something, has to be fitted to like 100 years. But even by that definition, we still have stuff that's too old for that. Sure. So anyway, the word Semitic is literally derived.
Dude, no, hold on, because this is so fucking stupid.
Let's take a drink for it then.
The ability to speak does not promote the ability to write.
Correct. That's why illiteracy is a thing.
The ability to read does not promote the ability. I mean, so like people are aware of this, right? That in antiquity, like scribe was a vocation. Mm-hmm. People trained to be scribes. And the reason for that is because not everyone could do it. Right?
I mean, we train people how to do handwriting today. We just spread it out throughout our Common Core curriculum.
Yeah, even in cultures where writing and reading was reasonably well spread, there were still typically professional scribes whose job it was to do things like transcribe things that were being said fluidly and in a recoverable way so that a text could be produced. For instance,
But
in
we
like
have-
in like the ancient world,
So,
the way you wrote a book was generally dictating to scribes who were then scribbling down what you said in shorthand,
right,
and then
right.
Yep.
taking those notes and producing an actual written text.
Yeah,
So, like-
I was
So
going to
what-
say,
now one of the things
in the chat, Apologia says, to quote Jar Jar Binks, I
I,
speak.
I speak.
Yeah.
So
The ability to speak does not make you intelligent.
just it doesn't. So one of the things that I work with manuscripts and with scribal cultures. One of the things that we're fairly confident about is that professional scribes were also not necessarily great writers.
Right.
Because as a professional scribe, in many instances, your vocation requires you to be able to recognize letters and words, but not necessarily to construct sentences, clauses, paragraphs.
Kind of like
Those sorts of
today.
things, to structure texts.
Today, being skilled at calligraphy doesn't make you being skilled at being an author. They're not the same skills.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not the same
Yeah.
thing.
All right.
Oh.
The word Semitic
Fucking
is
Bode.
literally derived from Shem. That's true. That is true. That is the etymology there. We'll take a drink. So good
Very
job.
good. Very good.
Just like there are parts of the solar system named after mythical deities that the people who named them didn't actually believe in. It is also true that this is the case. One of Noah's 3 sons. Thank you, buddy. Semitic languages are basically languages that came out of Babel that were given to Shem's descendants. I mean, I guess Bode would think that. I would identify them according to things like phonetic commonalities, the presence of triliteral roots, commonalities between things like, grammatical categories, like they tend to be, all of them tend to have a masculine and feminine two-gender system. They all tend to be nominative accusative in alignment in all circumstances. They tend to at least ancestrally have a past and non-past forms of the verb. They tend to emphasize aspect over tense. These are the things that I would use to define Semitic languages.
I just realized in this moment that Bode actually thinks that Semitic language is a category that pre-existed the assignment of these languages to that category.
He might, but I'm not. Well, as a conceptual group, obviously that idea postdates the origin of these languages. But I would also point out that as a language family, it objectively does pre-exist the name Semitic, right? Like that language family objectively existed for
Dapper.
thousands of years. Yes.
Apologia says, "Oh, we're reading Bode Hodge. Is this the AIG Bode or flopping solo career Bode?"
So this is AIG Bode. This is before he realized that he was not going to be inheriting the crown from his father-in-law. Sorry,
He was
Bode.
the spare, not
days-
the heir.
Your days as a Nepo baby are over. Aww. Kent the Bacteria Kind Halstead for $4.99 says, mathematicians write shit all the time, and therefore their prose should be immaculate. Yeah, there's that too.
Right.
Oh.
Yeah.
Turns out that just even writing a lot doesn't actually mean that you're good at it. Yeah. Anyway, in Genesis 10:22, the Bible records the different sons of Shem. Oh wait,
Genesis 10:22 to the fourth power.
sorry. Well, there's a
Correct.
comma there, so that
There's a comma.
threw it off a little
Okay.
bit.
Weird
Yeah.
way to write it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't.
Normally, you put the comma after a footnote like that. But you know what? That's
Mhm.
compared
He
to the
doesn't have an
other
editor.
like ridiculous mistakes that Bode has made in this book. I don't even care about that one. The Bible records different sons of Shem as Elam, Ashur, Arphaxad, Lud, and Aram. Okay. Aramaic, a Semitic language, due to it being mixed with descendants of Abraham who dominated the Middle East. I'm sorry, citation needed? What?
Citation needed.
Where does any of that even come from? What?
Wow.
His ass.
Yeah, I just threw up the citation needed video just now.
Hey, fun fact. Can I share a fun fact?
Yes.
The writers and the collectors of the Dead Sea Scrolls, and probably not all of them, but there's a significant portion of texts in the Dead Sea Scrolls that are Aramaic.
Yeah.
And there's there is a pretty. By the way, Dan Mashila did an interview this last week on. I wish I could. People should just type in Dan Mashila, where he talks about the Aramaic literature in Qumran. So
You're gonna have to
good.
spell that for people.
Mashila's. Oh, yeah, I'm
Just
going
type
to.
it in the chat.
Yeah.
Later.
So, but there you go. Go watch it. It's really good. Or maybe I'll just have them on my channel to do the same thing. But you should still go watch it. Anyways, so there's a ton of Aramaic literature in the Dead Sea Scrolls. There looks to have been a group, a sect, a flavor of early Judaism which prioritized the Aramaic as a language for not just the vernacular stuff, but just in terms of the circulation of traditions. And within this collection of texts in particular, there was this widely held belief that Abraham's native tongue was actually Aramaic. And the reason for that is because in Deuteronomy, the creed in Deuteronomy, I think it's Deuteronomy chapter 4, says that my father was a wandering Aramean.
Aramean. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, also I want to point out that Bode is wrong that Aramaic is like descended from Hebrew.
Sure.
It is another one of these like Canaanite languages that spread east a whole lot, and that only differentiated itself from this mix of languages like Edomite and Ugaritic and Hebrew later into history after these cultures have variously done things like been absorbed into wider Israelite culture, gone extinct, been conquered, or just spread out in other places. And if you're interested, there are still people who are using Aramaic today in a few different towns here and there.
Yeah. Still spoken
there
today.
are also, it is a liturgical language in Christian and Mandaean parts of the Middle East in some areas. So there are still Christian and Mandaean groups who are using it as their liturgical language. And also Mandaic is a form of Aramaic that is used in the Mandaean scriptures. So there you go. Anyway, let's see. Aramaic may seem familiar to the astute Bible reader as Jesus spoke it in some instances. Okay. Sure, that's the reason.
He spoke it in probably most instances,
Yeah,
but okay.
Right. Parts of Ezra, Nehemiah, and Daniel in the Old Testament were also written in Aramaic. Aramaic is a Semitic language. You already said that, Bode. And Semitic languages were post-Babel. You didn't establish this either, Bode. I'm taking a drink. Okay. So it may not be wise to assume the original language was Semitic.
The sound you just heard was me just slamming my head against my desk.
Yeah. Sure. You know what, Bode? To be fair, it is not safe to assume that the original language of the world was Semitic. I technically agree with you there, Bode. That is not a safe assumption. I'm getting a headache right now. I'm actually getting a headache.
Painful.
It would be more like Adamic, possibly Noahic. But the term Noah,
yeah.
Well, there's no C in there. It doesn't say Noahic.
I didn't say Noahic. I said Noahic.
Oh, well, there's sure maybe. I'm disappointed that he didn't go into Enochian, because I would love to see some like a few centuries ago English mysticism, conlang buffoonery. But the terminology Semitic would imply a post-Babel introduction of the language, although this author would not discount the possibility entirely. What does that mean? It would be more like Adamic or possibly Noahic, but the terminology Semitic would imply a post-Babel introduction of the language, although this author would not discount the possibility entirely. Does that mean anything to either of you, this sentence?
What possibility?
He's saying it would be... He wants to say that Semitic is a more accurate label because Shem wasn't born when Adam and Noah were alive, so you can call it Adamic or Noahic.
So he's basically complaining that the word would be anachronistic if the original language... Yeah, okay, that's what who cares? Who cares if the label is anachronistic, Bode? What possible difference could it make? I'm taking it. I can't with this guy anymore.
There's
I don't know, maybe I'm reading it wrong.
clearly a word count threshold that Bode has to reach
Yeah.
here.
You're-
And
also-
It does seem like that, despite the fact he has no
Switching
editor.
into the although this
Right.
author, bro, you're not that formal.
No, he's
Stop
not.
pretending.
Another popular review is Edenics, which, if it's a popular review, then that's news to me. I've never heard of Edenics, but okay. Edenics is the proposition that that Hebrew is the original language prior to the Tower of
yeah,
Babel.
there it is.
There we go.
Here
okay.
we go.
Perhaps-
Lashon Kodesh confirmed.
Perhaps as far back as the Garden of Eden. This view has been proposed in the past. Example,
Clear.
Henry Morris suspected this, but was hesitant to fully espouse it. Well, I guess good for Henry Morris.
Henry Morris was not one of the first people to propose this. This has been like
This is the
headcanon
rabbis.
in Judaism for like
Yeah.
centuries.
Okay, but Vishanti,
Oh,
you,
yeah.
you got to realize that for Bode, the history of the world basically goes through literal readings of the Torah into the historical books of the Old Testament, like Samuel and Kings and Chronicles and whatnot, right? Then to the New Testament and Acts, and maybe a little bit about like where Paul was when he was writing various things. And then hard cut to George McCready Price and the Young Earth Creationists. That's it.
Yeah.
Hard cut to the early 20th century. Nothing before that. No, okay, to be fair, he probably has a little bit of stuff about like Martin Luther and like the Protestant Reformation and nailing something to a church door, which he probably doesn't understand. So like he probably has that, and then after that, then that's the little hazy interlude before we cut right to early 20th century Young Earth Creationists, who obviously got nothing from Ellen White because she's not a real prophet, unlike the ones that Bode is.
Clearly.
Yeah.
Clearly.
Well, I mean, plus she was a woman. We can't have that.
Yeah, that's tough.
Okay, so but the leading proponent of this view is Isaac Moseson.
Moseson.
Sure, maybe he
Oh.
is. I don't know. He wrote a book called the World, the dictionary that reveals the Hebrew source of
word.
English. Oh, the word. Sorry. Oh no. Oh no.
19 No.
Is this a British Israelism guy? Got someone in the chat. Double check.
I'm gonna look it up right now. I'm
Okay.
gonna look it up right now.
This guy sounds like he's a British Israelism guy. So, in case anyone doesn't know, British Israelism is this idea that the lost tribes, which don't really exist in any meaningful way anyway, actually went to northwestern Europe, like northwest France and England and Scotland and Ireland and whatnot, and that really the people of the British Isles are in fact the real Israelites.
Oh no. Okay. Isaac Elchanan Moseson is best known for his creationist and pseudo-linguistic writings, which attempt to ground the origin of all human languages in ancient Hebrew as the language of the Garden of Eden. Here we go. When in reference to this book, The Word, the dictionary that reveals the Hebrew source of English, he began that work during his tenure at NYU working on his doctorate. And it had early challengers, including his PhD advisor, who called some of his examples a, quote, coincidence. This is hilarious to me. The linguist David L. Gold, however, was extremely critical of Moseson's work, writing, quote, possibly every error imaginable in the study of language was committed in this dictionary, which should be read, if at all, as an anti-textbook of linguistics to be studied not for emulation, but for avoidance.
Yes.
Oh, very
Aw.
nice.
Brutal.
What not to do?
Seriously. Naranda
Brutal.
says, this sounds identically as stupid as Black Hebrew Israelism. It is.
But yeah, he's actually Jewish. He went to Yeshiva University. And Edenics is his description regarding speech in the Garden of Eden as the original human language, and that human language did not evolve by accident. A Jewish press book review of his title, The Origin of Speeches, Intelligent Design and Language.
I'm taking a drink just for that title.
I know.
That's painful.
And there's a satire dunking on his title because it's riffing on Origin of the Species. So, yeah, it's bad.
Wow. All right. The book draws relationships
But
to
hey,
English.
at least he's not a British Israelite guy.
That's something. The book draws
I'll
relationships
take it.
to English words as well as Arabic from other Indo-European languages. Oh, other than English, okay. I don't think
Uh,
he's identifying Arabic as an Indo-European language.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say.
That have a Hebrew root in sound. No, Bodhi. What that is you're just finding any tenuous sounds like connection, right? Remember when Bodhi
Yeah.
thought that Tuvalu was settled by the descendants of
By
Tubal
Tubal,
because there's a vague sound similarity? That's all that's going on
sounds
here.
like- Yeah, Apologia notes in the chat, Mike Winger argues the names of Genesis 5 spell out a prophecy of Jesus, so obviously the Hebrew names must predate
Right.
Babel in order to make the prophecy true. I have heard
Oh no.
a certain Karaite Jew make this argument that the names must be Hebrew, like in the original version of the story, and that Hebrew is the original language because only the wordplay works in Hebrew. Therefore, it confirms Hebrew was the original language. The word Noah, meaning rest, must prove that Hebrew is the original language because Noah, meaning rest, being a play on that word, only works in Hebrew.
Okay, here's what that shows.
Wow.
That Hebrew is the original language of the composition. What it doesn't prove is that those people were real and spoke Hebrew.
Yep.
That's a separate idea that you would have to provide independent evidence of, because we all can agree that the text was written. And I think most people can agree it was written in Hebrew. But that's a far cry from therefore it is literally historically true. Those ideas don't directly connect in any way. So anyway, then Moses uses this as evidence for his claim that the original language prior to Babel was Hebrew. Yet he is comparing this to biblical Hebrew, which goes back to about the time of Nehemiah and Ezra. I wonder how Bode is getting to that conclusion. The Hebrew that is currently spoken was more or less finalized by Ezra the priest. Wait, I'm sorry. Like
the Hebrew was
the
finalized?
Hebrew that's currently spoken?
What the hell are you smoking, Bode? And where did you get it? I want some. I'm taking a drink. That was okay.
The reconstructed, revived Hebrew language that's spoken today
apparently was actually
more or less finalized by Ezra. Oh my goodness.
Spoiler, no, that's not true in the least.
Wow.
Jeez. The priest inscribed around 400 to 500 BC. It should be 500 to 400 BC. Bode, learn how BC works. And using the Masoretic text that was passed along for many... Wait, what does he mean by that? The Hebrew was used in the Masoretic text. The Masoretic... So, like, Ezra was the one who finalized the Masoretic text? What?
He's saying that the Hebrew that's used in the Masoretic text
was finalized by Ezra. So, but Ezra... So Ezra was like a great grammarian or something who like formally wrote down all the rules to Hebrew that the rest of the Masoretic text had to follow?
Oh my god. Yeah, Apologia in the chat says, oh yeah, then explain how someone named Dr. Doom is a dangerous bad guy. Checkmate.
Oh. Alright. From a big picture standpoint, the argument is that some word similarities in various languages resemble Hebrew, So that means the original language was a form of Hebrew or Proto-Semitic. This would actually be a slightly more reasonable conclusion. But this is fallacious. Bode, have you ever looked at yourself in the mirror? Because if this is fallacious, then virtually everything else you've said in this book is also fallacious for the same reason, Bode. I love that Bode can recognize that, this is an idea I don't agree with already, so I'm allowed to think critically about it. But when it comes to like
/self-aware wolves energy, right here.
But it's like, hey, did you guys know that some river in eastern India has a name that kind of sounds like a different name from the Bible? From the historical, literally true Babel story? And then here he's like, yeah, but that's fallacious reasoning. Bode, it's your reasoning. However, it is unlikely that anyone would deny the influence of many words from other language roots. Like, so are you saying that no one would deny that languages borrow words? Because, that's true. Whether Semitic or otherwise, English, by and large, has been influenced by various languages and root languages. No. I'm taking a drink.
Wow.
English has indeed been influenced by various languages, but it has not been influenced by root languages in any meaningful way.
Root languages.
No one...
What does that even mean?
Basically, that English has been like influenced by Proto-Semitic and Proto-Indo-European...
As well as
Proto-Sinitic. Yeah. So here's the thing.
Proto-Yiddish.
Yeah, well, obviously. Yeah. Here's the thing. Languages borrow words all the time, but in basically every case, they tend to borrow words either from contemporary languages or culturally important but dead languages like Latin or something like that, right? Languages do not go back in time to rifle through the vocabulary of like Proto-Semitic to bring forward a word into English. That's just not a thing that happens.
Right.
Because when you say that they've been influenced
I-
by root languages, what you seems to mean is that, like, synchronically at one time, English grabbed a word from, like, I don't know, Proto-Sino-Tibetan or Sumerian or something, and then just tossed it. No. In fact, if you want to find Sumerian words entering English, you have to get into, like, the 20th century when Sumerian was actually decoded, and then we could figure out what any of it was. Anyway.
Okay, I believe it's Keisha in the chat says, this is so insane that I think people are forgetting to drink.
Yeah. We'll add a couple drink triggers in here.
Apologies, is you can't just add proto to any word. That's what quantum is for. Quantum Yiddish.
Do you think...
Quantum Semitic.
Okay. I need someone to volunteer to go join various, like, creationist forums and whatnot, and pretend that you have a new hypothesis about, like, biblical languages, about quantum Yiddish, and see if you can convince Raw Matt that that's a real thing that scholars not talk about, just like pre-Yiddish. Anyway.
Yiddish.
It's a major leap to make the claim that since some words have a relationship, Hebrew is the original language. Gee, is that a really big fucking claim, Bode? Oh my god, Bode.
Gee, Bode.
Weird.
You were
Interesting.
Spend the whole book up to this point doing that exact thing.
The level of hypocrisy is absolutely insane. Like, Bode, have you ever had a single moment of self-awareness? Have you ever thought, well, how do I come across other people? How do other people take what I say? Has that ever occurred to you? One can find words in English from a host of other languages, too. Yeah, Greek, Latin, and so on. Yeah, that's true. We'll take a drink, I guess. Good job, Bode. But does that mean that those languages were the original pre-Babel language? No, not at all. Gee, wonderful,
This
Bode. I'm glad that you figured that out.
It's just
It feels
the pinnacle.
it feels as valid a hypothesis as any of these other ones.
Right, that's the
I
thing.
guess.
It's exactly the same type of hypothesis that he's been making this entire book. He just doesn't like this one. That's the
Becca
only.
Justiniano
That's the
in the chat
only
says, I went to
difference.
put cookies in the freezer and came back to something about quantum Yiddish. WTF?
If you can't, if you're not here for the entire thing, you get lost fast. A theological problem. Oh, good, a theological problem, everybody.
Oh, theological.
right.
Okay.
Yes.
A theological
Yes,
problem
Those are the
also.
biggest problem.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
A theological
biggest
problem
ones.
also arises if the Babel confusion did not change the sounds of words, but only the spelling. Who said anything about that? What are you talking about?
Right? No. Yeah.
God said he confused the language, literally lip or speech of the world. This indicates that the sounds change. However,
Okay.
there may well have been many words that were still the same, since Genesis 11:1 makes the point that language and words were distinct, yet what was confused was the language or the way it was spoken, not necessarily all the words.
What? Does he understand that homophones exist? And that's not making the point that he thinks it's making. Because if he's like, oh, well, maybe they just changed the spelling, Bode.
The
You
only
can change the spelling,
might
and if
be-
it's pronounced the same...
the only thing I can think that he means here is that when God came down to confuse the languages, he mixed up the grammar somehow, but not the vocabulary. And so everyone was using the same basic words, but they were arranging them and using different affixes for them because the grammar was different, but the words were the
BSO is
same.
the original grammar structure. Fight me.
So this is the theological problem.
Yeah. Also, where's the
That-
theology there? I don't even know.
Yeah, really, what?
I think what he's getting at is because the Hebrew Bible uses these two words, right? Lip and speech, often as like it's not really a compound, but they're used together all the time, just to indicate language, right? So, but he's looking at that, and he's interpreting from this that one of those refers to language as distinct from actual words.
Which you can't really
There-
do. Words are
You
a component
can't,
of language.
and like it's fucking because he doesn't understand
Anything.
how this language works. right?
Not this language. Get rid of the word this.
Any
He doesn't
language.
understand how
Okay,
language works.
Any language. Yes. So, but in his mind, the theological problem is created by not recognizing the distinction, right? So I think that's it. Wow.
This is just so bad.
It really is. This is just this is Bode's problem.
Yeah.
It's not really a problem for any sensible person. I seriously think I'm looking at this and I'm thinking Bode made this up. Bode saw this and said, I have a fucking brilliant idea about this text based on the distinction of these two words.
I'm a researcher.
He thinks he's saying something insightful and original here, which is just sad. It really is.
Yeah,
Bless his heart.
You know what? Okay, Bode. If you ever see this, here's the thing, right? I will tutor you on the very basics of linguistics. I'm not a linguist. I'm not a professor. But just like I could teach you how to use Blender to a basic level of proficiency, and then when I'm not a professional like visual effects guy, I could get you the basics of like, what is a language? What are words? How does grammar work at the most basic level? Like, what is a subject, an object, a predicate? What are cases? Like genitive, accusative, nominative. What's the difference between the genitive and the construct state? Between, say, Greek and Hebrew, because they're sort of the same but also sort of opposites. That's a little weird, right? Yeah, I could get you through some of this stuff. And then you could write a follow-up to this book where you're less batshit crazy. Obviously, it won't be completely not batshit crazy, but it could get to the point where someone who knows, like, about, say, maybe, I don't know, like, anyone who's conversational in more than one language won't just pull out their hair at how crazy you're being. You get to that point. Because that's the thing, right? Like, it doesn't take formal linguistic training. It just takes, hey, have you ever learned another language other than English to the degree to which you could have a simple conversation in it? Then you know that most of what Bode is saying is absolute insane nonsense. But hey,
okay,
let's keep going. Moseson takes
no. Sable Eagle in the chat says, depending on how it's analyzed, Yiddish behaves as both a wave and a particle.
Except he said participle.
Okay, so here's something.
Oh, sorry, wave and participle. My bad.
Here's
Quantum
something.
Yiddish operates as both a wave and a participle.
And a participle.
I could probably come up with a quantum language as a conlang idea. Hear me out.
Oh no.
Are you ready for this? All right, so what we do is we have a system where there are a low number of syllables, right? So that most words are homophones for something else. And then what we do is we assign which meanings there are to certain semantic categories, which can be largely arbitrary, right? And we can have a certain, finite number of them. And so, what that means is, as you utter a phrase, which semantic category all the words are going to fall into remains ambiguous until you then use some word towards the end of the utterance to indicate which semantic category you're using, which then collapses the meaning down to a single particular meaning now that you've observed the last bit of the sentence. I could totally do this.
This is starting to sound like the Seraphim language.
A little bit. It's very cursed.
Yeah.
It might actually be a good idea for the Cursed Conlang Circus.
For the Cursed Conlang Circus 3. Let's do it!
All right.
That's a good one.
I feel like I shouldn't participate, at least not in the sense that I would be available to have to be judged and win, because I talk to Agma Schwa every once in a while in the background, and I feel like
no. I think that his judging process is fair and impartial.
All right, well, maybe. You know what?
Yeah.
Remind me,
man.
I should ask him.
Do it.
I should
100% do it.
Do it.
Yeah.
All right. Moseson takes as a presupposition that Hebrew was the root language to all other language, and proceeds to try to defend that view. Bode, oh my god. Bode takes as a presupposition that the Bible is literally historically accurate, and then proceeds to try to defend that view. Taking a drink. Bode, I'm
Or
begging.
slash self-aware wolves.
Seriously. I can't even imagine having this little self-awareness. Like, I think constantly, maybe it's just I have social anxiety or something, but I am constantly thinking like, I wonder how this comes across to people.
No.
Bode apparently has never had that thought in his entire life.
Apparently.
Just full-throated confidence in absolute nonsense. He says, yes, I began from the biblical, given that Hebrew is the mother tongue. Genesis chapter 11, which apparently is, okay,
To the
Genesis.
8th power.
Some weird capitalization.
Oh my god, no, he's wrong about this. Look,
in there.
Ibid would indicate that it's actually Genesis 11:9, but what he really
11:9.
means is 6.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't know how to
Both
use
of them.
Ibid.
Yeah.
He doesn't know how to use Ibid. Oh my god. Oh no, Bode. Taking a drink. Bode. Guys, it's page 1 of Genesis 11:9. Don't you know that?
Yeah, it's page 1.
Oh my god, Bode.
What?
The thing is, you can tell
Wow.
he's trying to be scholarly throughout this entire book, but he just fundamentally screws it up at every opportunity. Okay. However, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
All right. However, nowhere in Genesis 11 is Hebrew stated to be the mother tongue, so Moses' presupposition is lacking at a foundational level. Oh, gee. Oh, no.
Babe.
In fact, the first mention of Hebrew in the Bible is with Abram. Genesis 14:13 to the 9th power. But it does not refer to a language. Instead, it says that Abraham was a Hebrew descendant of Eber. You know what? So I think it really says that he's a Hebrew in the sense that he crossed over as the etymology of the word.
Yeah.
But I'm going to give Bode props, right? Because I honestly did not expect Bode to be able to distinguish between the use of the word Hebrew referring to like people who speak a language versus other designations and other uses of that word, and he did here. So you know what, Bode, you have exceeded my expectations, which, to be fair, were very low, but you did it.
Very low.
So good job, Bode. In fact, every mention of Hebrew in the Old Testament refers to a person being a person. He meant to say human being, and then he said to person, and he didn't get
Person. No, refers to a person being a Hebrew.
Oh, shouldn't there be a comma then?
No, it refers to a person being a Hebrew rather than to Hebrew as a language.
Okay, that's fair. Refers to a person being a Hebrew rather than to the Hebrew as a language. Well, that's probably true, as far as I know. The first mention of Hebrew as a language is John 5:2, okay, which was originally written in Greek. Yeah, that's fair. We'll take a drink for that. That's almost certainly true. Good job, Bode. And some translators say this reference should be to Aramaic. Look, it's possible that when John says like the language of the Hebrews, that he means the language currently in use among Jewish people, which would probably be Aramaic. So I could see that as like I'm not ready to agree, but I can see that as like a reasonable take. However, the root word is eber, signifying it probably is Hebrew. Okay, great. In the Old Testament, though, 2 Kings says, then Eliakim, the son of Hilkiah, and Shebna, and Joah, said to Rabshak, gotta get a better name for you, buddy. I'm gonna call you Rab. Speak now to your servants in Aramaic, for we understand it, and do not speak with us in Judean, in the hearing of people who are on the wall. Okay, cool. The language of the Jews was not called Hebrew until it was translated as Judean. What? But instead, sorry. The language of the Jews was not called Hebrew, but what is translated as Judean? Who cares what it was called, Bode? It was also used... I don't care about this, and we're skipping down. Biblically, too, it is reasonable to expect...
Apology says, what if we're all casually saying the pre-Babel version of the Tetragrammaton accidentally, and God is just getting madder and madder at his sins to him?
Oh my goodness. That's the real original sin.
They're called, that's the true name only movement. There are people who think that if you're not saying God's name correctly, then you're praying to a false god. And their interpretation of what the correct pronunciation of that word is varies wildly, as you will not be surprised.
My favorite thing is that technically the Jehovah's Witnesses are in that camp, and their idea of what the true name of God is absolutely nothing that would have been recognizable to anyone in the Bible.
Nope.
But Dapper in Latin, Yahweh begins with an I. Or sorry, Jehovah begins with an I. I messed that up.
Yeah, and then later on, after the letter J starts being a thing, it started with a J, and there's a whole long explanation about German and Latin.
That was my botched callback to Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
Oh, right, where he has to step on the right tile.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, and he starts with an I, right? Yep.
Yeah. Oh, he starts with a J.
Well, yeah, but he should have started with an I.
The name of God is Jehovah, right?
Which it's not.
And no, and it this is in the temple of the Canyon of the Crescent Moon, which was which supposedly was built by the Knights Templar who were holding on to the Holy Grail. So
okay,
in the deep Middle Ages,
we shouldn't trust the Knights Templar because they're the ones who actually opened up the Hell Portal in Jerusalem.
That's right.
We can't trust those guys. No. Also, did you notice? So that, in case anyone is wondering, that's a reference to Trench Crusade, and I love what they did with the Avignon Papacy. Did you guys see that?
No. What did they do?
Oh, okay. So in Trench Crusade lore, the Avignon Papacy still kind of occurs, but the Pope in Avignon becomes a cultist to Beelzebub and starts spreading like the affliction of the Lord of Flies throughout southern France.
Oh my god.
And so now there's this little enclave of demonic worship in southern France dedicated to Beelzebub and spreading of his diseases.
My god. I love this game so much already.
Trench Crusade has some absolutely amazing lore and art, and if you don't know about it, you should go check them out. Just go check out Trench Crusade. It's great. Biblically, too, it is reasonable to expect Hebrew to have undergone changes. Well, I mean, biblically or not, that's how languages work, so sure.
The changes are right fucking there.
Right?
In the text.
Yeah.
We can, not always, but there are times we can actually date or at least provide a semblance of an idea for dates to some of the texts based on the fact that there are changes within the usage of Hebrew.
Mm-hmm. All right.
So
Abraham,
I'll just for just one, because this is fucking bugging me. In a lot of later texts, like in the book of Daniel or Ezra or Esther, one of the things that you will find is the Hebrew particle sh, which is an inseparable particle. It's a prefix. It's attached to words, and it basically takes the place of the relative pronoun asher. And it looks like it happens later. And we have a handful of texts where it happens because they're later.
I mean, I'm well into the Omer count, and every night is a certain quality that is within another quality. And we say it's, for instance, Yesod, Shebe, and then whatever the week is. So this week I think is Gvura. So it's Tiferet, Shebe, Gvura. And the sh prefix is there to tell you that is blank.
Meat Permits Tad for $2 says, once a month we need unfettered kip as a treat.
I shouldn't say you're fucking welcome. Dapper should. But how badly do you guys want to say fuck right now? I bet it's killing you.
I don't know. Abraham, as a descendant of Eber, actually left his family. Recall that family groups were divided by their language in Genesis 10:5. He settled among the Canaanites, who were obviously speaking Canaanite languages. Canaan was a descendant of Ham. Oh no.
Wow.
Bode!
Oh no.
Hebrew is a
Canaanite
language. It's
taking a drink. I wonder what Bode thinks the Canaanite languages were.
It was bad. It was very, very bad.
They're evil,
Canaanite language,
sacrificing languages.
That's right.
But the thing is,
all the bad words in it.
they just were. Okay, so clearly, this is not someone who's ever looked into like the differences between like Edomite and Hebrew and Ugaritic and Elamite or Moabite. Like he's clearly never looked into. And to be fair, most people never have a reason to. I would expect most
he's
people to
writing
not
a
know
book
this.
about
But yeah,
this
that's the
shit.
difference. That's the thing. He's
Right?
writing the book. It's just like when I say, like, I'm never going to criticize someone for not knowing what a dinosaur is, but I'll criticize Kent Hovind for not knowing what a dinosaur is because he calls himself Dr. Dino, an expert on dinosaurs in the Bible. Like,
Yep.
That's my line. If you're going to call yourself or act like you're an expert on something, I expect you to know the basics.
Yep.
Clearly, Bodhi doesn't.
I don't think that's too much to ask.
No, it's not.
It's not.
Know
it
what you're
shouldn't
talking
be.
about when
Not
you're
really.
presenting yourself as an expert is pretty basic. Abraham, Lot, Isaac, Jacob, and Jacob's sons lived in Canaan for centuries. Okay, cool. Then the sons of Jacob, Israel, went and lived among the Egyptians for centuries, which they didn't, but sure, whatever. The Egyptians were descendant of Mizraim, who was also a son of Ham, and had different language that likely influenced the Israelites too. I mean, yeah, Egyptian isn't a Canaanite language, although, here's a question. So Bode accepts that Semitic languages are a real language family. But he seems to think that Semitic languages took off at Babel, which would mean that other Afro-Asiatic languages, like Egyptian or Berber language, had different origins, and yet we know that they're actually part of the same wider Afro-Asiatic language family. So, like, how does he square that circle there?
Also, spoiler alert, we have Egyptian loan words in the text of the Hebrew Bible.
Yeah, a lot of them.
Yeah, like Totafot is probably one. Shatnez is definitely one. Like, these are...
To be fair, I don't think Bode would deny that.
My God.
So if the language of Eber, who was at Babel, came through Abraham down to the Israelites and remained the same, which it couldn't have, but sure, then there should be plenty of others speaking and writing in it other than the Israelites who were repeatedly wiped out with only a remnant to repopulate. What?
You can't wipe something out and then have a remnant. Those are not...
Okay,
no.
Abraham also had other sons.
Getting at?
I don't know. They would have originally been speaking Abraham's language, that of Eber. Yeah, I guess that would check out, sure. Many Arabic speakers claim heritage to Ishmael. True. Arabic has many similarities to Hebrew, but it is still a different language. You know what, Bode? I'll take a drink, because that's true. Good job, Bode. You got it. Since... That's why I can't just use my Arabic knowledge to read Hebrew. It doesn't work. Since the Hebrew from Eber's day has not survived in other nations, which you haven't established, it could very well have survived in the Arabic speakers. Because if they both descend from Eber's language, then guess what? The language survived. This helps confirm that Hebrew has indeed changed since Abraham.
This is his rationale. This is his rationale. Not that we can actually look and see changes in Hebrew within the goddamn text.
Do you think that...
No, this is it. This is how we know.
Would Bode say that
Hebrew has changed?
Eber was the actual original Proto-Semitic speaker. Do you think Bode would say that?
I don't know.
I think he might.
Interesting.
Similarities between languages like Aramaic and Arabic are expected since they were in the same vicinity. No, they're expected because they're in the same damn language family, Bode. What? They share an actual common ancestor language that people actually spoke that split into these other languages, Bode. That's why it's expected. It doesn't matter how close they are. Jeez. Okay, I can do this. In fact, it would not be surprising if Ezra's Hebrew and Arabic go back to the same root language. You don't say, Bode! Eber's actual language came from Babel and have both deviated since Babel. Yeah, Bode, imagine thinking that two different languages of the same language family actually descend from a common ancestor language, which is what a language family is in the first place, Bode, which you've already said you know. What? Influence from Hebrew and vice versa with regard to Latin and Greek.
What?
Is also expected.
Roman Empire.
Yeah, and Alexander the Great is also expected since both had many years of interaction in the Middle East. But not in most of the biblical texts, though, Bode.
That Hebrew influenced Latin.
No, oh wait,
kind of looks
it does still
that way. Yes, and Greek.
That is one hell of a claim.
Bode, I would love to know which words in Latin you think descend directly from Hebrew. That would be fascinating.
He's looking at,
because I'm having trouble thinking of anything.
He probably thinks that Lucifer is one of them.
Oh my god.
I'm guessing.
I
I'm
hate that
guessing
you're
he's
probably
looking
right.
at this too, right? I'm looking at this too. I'm guessing here because I don't know, but I'm betting he's looking at his New Testament and seeing like or even his Septuagint. No, he's not because he's not even that sophisticated. But he's looking at his New Testament and he's seeing like the Graicized versions of Hebrew names and thinking Hebrew influence on the Greek. There it is.
Vladimir suggests chutzpah, but I don't think chutzpah can be found in Latin. I don't know.
Yeah.
Word similarities do nothing to help the conclusion that Hebrew could be the original pre-Babel language, as these similarities would be expected whether or not it was the original language. Languages have in-depth contextual, syntactical, and grammatical workings that are unique and also have to be accounted for. So, Bode,
I want to know who wrote that sentence for him.
Your crazy ideas about Tuvalu and some random-ass river in India make no sense then. Can we agree? How is this even possible? You know what? All right. We're gonna start wrapping up. This has been a lot. And
Oh, yeah.
my head is
Yeah, look,
actually starting
It's
to
already.
hurt.
We only have 10 minutes left.
Yeah.
Wow.
All right. So we will start with if number 2 is correct. The previous documents that survived on the Ark could easily have been translated, right? Which I don't even remember what number 2 was. Oh yeah, it was the one that wasn't actually different from number 1.
It's the one that was redundant. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Great. So we get to start into the redundant thing, where maybe Bode will explain why maybe it's not redundant. I don't even know. Okay.
But man,
I'm speechless after this.
I'm sorry.
This has been wild.
But doesn't this just like fucking defeat the purpose of, because at the Tower of Babel, so the documents that survived the Ark were translated just after they left the Ark. Is that the idea? I mean, I guess we'll have to read it and find out. But
yeah, I'm not sure.
And so they have multiple versions of these stories just floating around in multiple languages even prior to the Tower of Babel. Like, I don't
know either.
I shouldn't have asked. I'm sorry.
We'll probably find out next week.
Yeah.
And also, I did not have in my bingo card for today seeing C used to indicate an S sound in a Hebrew transliteration. That was
yes, that was.
Oh, Borgamporia says, great job on Top Hats Off last night. Well, thank you. I had a lot of fun with that, and I think that other people did too. So, yeah, in case anyone's wondering, on Fridays at 5 p.m. Pacific, I play Star Trek Adventures over on my other channel, Top Hats Off, with a number of people you might know. There's Chesh is there, Craig from FTFE is there, Jordan from Reason to Doubt, Maddie from Science Side Up and OK Roll is there. We've got people who are frequently in the chat like Zerolon and Tirirana and Necro. And yeah, we play some Star Trek stuff, and it was a lot of fun. Yesterday we cured a outbreak of the augment virus that had been yeah, that's why Dr. Phlox came up so much.
Nice.
With vaccines?
You'll have to watch and find out.
Oh. But I'm not going to.
Well, then you'll just have to have it be a mystery. Or you could just actually watch my really cool Star Trek show.
I don't know when I'm going to find the time to do that.
Just put it on in the background while you're cooking or cleaning.
I guess.
Yeah. There's like 60-something videos or something in the playlist.
I mean, instead of watching people like David Falk, perhaps
listen.
You could listen to Dapper's game.
Listen, you guys.
Mm-hmm.
If I don't watch David Falk,
then no one else
then we will never benefit from the joys of Mishkapet.
9 hours.
Right? 9 hours. If not,
I feel like I would be willing to give that up.
Mishkapet? You would give up Mishkapet?
Yeah, because it's currently
Really?
giving me a stress headache. Like this minute. Anyway, in case anyone was wondering, yeah, he's really bad at Hebrew. I don't know how good he is at Egyptian, but at least he claims to be better.
I have to. Okay, I have to say this because you brought it up and it's true. Somebody asked a question in his live stream last night about when he would be writing a commentary on the Book of Exodus.
Oh my!
And my first response to that was, like, maybe when he should fucking learn
Hebrew?
the language.
Yeah.
Properly
Yeah.
Hebrew.
Yeah.
It seems like a requirement.
Yeah. Look, I'm not someone who often says "heaven forbid," but that's a heaven forbid moment if there ever was one.
Yeah, there is.
Jeez. All right. So for $2, Meat Permits Tad says, "Kip, shout out your content with Justin Sledge," which means let's just jump into anything you want to tell people about, and we can start with the Justin Sledge.
We can start with Justin Sledge. Dr. Justin Sledge from Esoterica was on my channel with Vish on Wednesday this last week, and we had a lovely chat about a lot of different things. People should go check it out. And I should mention that we're probably going to be doing some more stuff in the future.
Cool.
He's actually going to be in the area here in I think July, and we're gonna get together and
drink absinthe. Drink absinthe. Drink absinthe.
I like how we're just assuming that he's not going to be renditioned to El Salvador between now and then.
Hopefully, right? So, I mean, hopefully not. But yeah. So there is that. People should check out. I will be doing a stream at some point this next week, and I think I will be talking about the Malachi Adonai, the angel of Yahweh.
Interesting.
And the reason I'm doing that is because I'm starting to work through a bunch of this stuff about the two powers.
Hey,
which I'm
you
gonna
need to
be...
call Simone in on this.
Oh, Simone's on this already, so I'm way ahead of you, Vish. But she was moving house.
That's right.
So she's kind of been in and out. But anyways, yes. So Simone's gonna help me out with some of that. Maybe I could get her on. That would be amazing.
Do it.
But anyways, so I will probably be streaming this week. I haven't set a date or a time yet, but I'll figure that out here in the next few days. It's almost 2:00, so in 2 hours I will be on Myth Vision podcast with Dr. Joshua Bowen, which is gonna be fun because we haven't done this in like a couple of years together. So that's gonna be cool. People should go check that out. And then there's a possibility that I may do a drunken live stream in the middle of the night at some point tonight, where you can hear me say the F-bomb a lot. Unfettered. So, but yeah, I mean, that may or may not happen. I don't know. You just never know. You never know with these things.
Right? I mean, I always know, but maybe you don't.
I don't always know.
All right, Shanti, you got anything coming up that people need to know about?
If I do, I'll post about it.
Okay, so follow Vishanti's socials. Let's see, what do we got coming up here on this channel? Well,
I mean, mostly I'm just gonna show my Vish list.
Yes,
Let's get that up. Whatever.
So go to Vish's channel and go to her Vish list if you want to help Vish out. So let's see what's coming up this week. On Tuesday, we got another Kent with Bent coming. Maybe we can force Bent to wear a tutu for the one after that. That'd be fun. Then we've got on Thursday the Hovind x Biddle, or Hovind versus Biddle, the movie. So remember that time that Biddle was on Kent Hovind's YouTube channel, to say things that Kent Hovind actually disagrees with no pushback from Kent Hovind, which was weird. So and then he also just basically parroted John Sanford a whole lot. So yeah, that'll be a big long video. I think that's over 4 hours long. So if you come to that premiere, bring some popcorn, bring something to drink. Maybe bring a lunch. So that'll be on Thursday. That's at Pacific 3 p.m. Eastern. Then on Friday at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, we are playing more Star Trek Adventures with the Star Trek Endurance Show. This next episode is called I Ship. That's I, comma, ship, not I as the subject of a verb to ship. So look forward to that. I think it'll be fun. And then on Saturday, we're going to be back to continue on with chapter 26 of this book, because we couldn't get through this chapter in one sitting because it was just...
So much dumb.
If you've enjoyed the show, please hit like. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. And if you are enjoying what I do here on the channel, please consider supporting the channel financially. If you can afford it, we have the channel Patreon, we have memberships, we have super chats and super thanks. Also, there's merch. Check out all that stuff. I also have a Amazon wishlist, as does Bent, as does Bishanti. Kip doesn't, because he doesn't want gifts, because he's just kind of misanthropic. So, yeah.
Yes.
Yep. All right, bye, everybody. I hope you all stay safe out there. If you are interested and you have access to my Discord server, we are going to be watching some Power Rangers Ninja Steel, and then some Power Rangers Super Ninja Steel, I think. No, actually, we're only getting to episode 20 of Ninja Steel. We're going to be finishing out most of the rest of Ninja Steel and next time. Move 1 and 2 of these. So, correction there. Sorry, I was wrong about that. But yeah, if you're interested in that, come hang out. And if you're not, then I hope you have a safe rest of your weekend. Remember, do not cooperate with ICE. In fact, you should treat ICE as in basically terrorists. And yeah, they should be treated as if you were, say, in occupied France and they were the SS, or you were in, say, East Germany and they were the Stasi. That's how you should treat ICE. Not the frozen water immigration at ICE. Frozen water is great, and I love it.
I should be abolished.
Not the frozen water kind.
Yeah, not the frozen water kind, but yes, that is the weakest version of what should happen with ICE, in my opinion. It should be abolished. Anyway, I'm going to get out of here before I go and say things that get the FBI even more on my case. Bye, everybody! Hey, before you leave, I just want to take a second to thank my patrons and channel members, especially those pledging $20 or above. Ben Tovind, Furgevara, Tapioca Weasel, Whispers, Max Cherry, North Texas Fossils, John Ackerman, Elleron Teller, Ian Chen, Kelvin Brostig von Mennen, Landon Knoll, Mabbity Babbity, Sphincter of Doom, and Volus. It's because of my channel members and patrons whom you're seeing on screen that this channel can stay afloat. Without you, it would all shut down. If you want to join the team, there's a link to join the channel below this video, and there's a link to join the Patreon in the description. On the Patreon, you can get a 10% discount for pledging annually, and either way, you get early access to virtually all of my scripted videos, often 3 to 5 months before they come out for the general public. Thanks for watching.